Watching Eddington is like looking in a mirror. And by that, I mean, we have a film that reflects our society so well, it's almost uncomfortable to watch. So let's just get straight into a breakdown of what I thought the film did so well and what it could have used a little more of. I'm Lucy Lumen, a photographer who also happens to love watching and talking about movies. So if that sounds like something you would also enjoy, subscribe and let's be movie friends. Just a courtesy note, this review does contain some spoilers. There is just so much to unpack with a film like Eddington, and I want to start off by praising it for taking on so many current issues that are extremely complex and touchy, and I think a lot of directors would probably rather stay away from. People have said that it's capturing that COVID paranoia so well, where everything came to a head, but honestly, I feel like everything the film dealt with thematically can be applied to right now and probably years from now, as we are all perpetually online, paranoid and at each other's throats if we don't all agree 100% on something. While watching Eddington in the cinema, I felt like I could take this huge sigh of relief that someone had pointed out everything that is wrong with the world and was able to do it without staunchly taking one side or another. Ari Aster has managed to do that, but without fence sitting. And this is where I think the genius lies in Eddington. This video could easily delve into just political commentary, and I don't want to do that because I think it would kind of be almost meta, because that is what is happening in Eddington and it's leading to a lot of arguments. And we are kind of seeing that play out post Eddington being released. There is a lot of conversation online that is just doing exactly what everyone in Eddington is doing. It's kind of like art imitating life. So I think that that's really interesting, but also a little sad, because I know personally when I walked out of the theater, this movie was something that made me very reflective of my own behavior online and also in my community and where we might end up as a society. And I'm hoping that other people felt like this when they walked away from seeing Eddington. So instead of getting a little bit political, let's talk about Joaquin Phoenix's amazing performance as Joe the sheriff. He fully embodied this character. He was simmering away and then eventually exploded. And I think Joaquin really captured this. I felt a lot of empathy for his character, but at the same time, I really winced at some of his choices. I haven't seen this movie in a long time, but Joaquin's whole sort of character arc and storyline reminded me of Michael Douglas in Falling Down. He was this man who was trying so hard to do the right thing, you know, the neighborly thing. He is conservative in his traditional beliefs, and the world is changing so rapidly around him. And as a result, he feels like he is losing control. I am such a big fan of any film that depicts someone losing complete control over their lives and just like descending. And I think Eddington showed us not only Joaquin's Phoenix doing this, but like an entire town of people. So it was right up my alley. Joaquin's character perfectly conveyed a middle-aged man living in a world that is kind of no longer for him. I see my own father have this furrowed brow and disgruntled look at what is going on around him, and his perceived idea of this loss of decency and not quite understanding the landscape of social media and where he now fits and how he can be useful in society. And I think that I saw so many men that I know in Joaquin's character, and it allowed me to have a lot of empathy for them. And I think that that's really great. Empathy is what we are missing in society right now, and Eddington 100% showed that. So the fact that we were able to simultaneously feel outraged by characters' behavior, but then also understand it and feel empathy in itself was one of the best things about Eddington and why it's such an important film. Joe feels pretty isolated without the addition of COVID-19 thrown in the mix, and we get a sense of how on edge he is from the get-go. And it felt like a tense place to start. But where we end up with Joe is just completely different to how I thought it was going to end. Let's talk about phone usage and the way screens were portrayed and captured in the film. Smartphones and the use of social media have featured in movies a lot in recent years because it's such a huge part of our lives and therefore the stories we tell on the big screen. I do often find the addition of a smartphone in a movie to kind of cheapen it a little bit. It can sometimes reduce like the overall cinematic experience for me, or kind of break the fourth wall, I guess. The way smartphones and laptops are integrated into the film are so well done. It all blends with the style and look without feeling like this obtrusive tech item in the frame that lowers the tone. For example, the way Joe's announcement that he is running for mayor is shown on Emma Stone's laptop, and we see her response in the reflection on screen. That feels just so expert and thought about, as opposed to just showing us the vertical video. As a side note, Joe's character running through the protests of disgruntled Gen Zers, all in a huff with his tripod and ring light, ready to film some content for his campaign, was so hilarious to me in amongst such a chaotic scene. And that kind of humor pops up so often in Eddington and took the edge off of what was a very heavy and confronting film. Threaded through the entire movie is this constant audio track of either people watching things on their phone, their laptop, listening to podcasts, and just being, swarmed and bombarded with opinion and information. This really made me think about my life and how I kind of always have to have something on. And I think that this was done obviously on purpose to really illustrate how stuffed these characters are with different ideas and opinions, and then it's leading to just chaos in the streets. So with all that praise for Eddington out of the way, I have a question. Were there too many components? Online reviews have indicated to me that a lot of people feel there were one too many things going on in Eddington, and this made for a disjointed or overwhelming final result. As if there were so many plot lines and characters and issues being raised that it just kind of felt messy and like it wasn't making any one point. I can understand this, and initially I was inclined to agree because when the movie finished in the cinema, I was really just trying to process everything that I had seen, and I immediately knew that it was something that I would have to watch a second time to fully grasp. It was a lot. There were a lot of characters and kind of subplots, and then we had that ending, which kind of just felt really jarring. We didn't really get much time to recover from Joe killing the homeless man to then moving on to Pedro Pascal. And then it just felt like this descent into kind of, madness and chaos. And it was just a lot to process as a viewer. I think that this was done intentionally though. So I don't necessarily criticize it. I think it was all very, very intentional and very thought out. I think that the idea was for you to feel as if you are in the internet, like you are experiencing what these characters are experiencing, and to an extent what some of us are experiencing, where we are so overwhelmed, we've become so paranoid, or we can't, focus on anything anymore. And I think that the narrative was trying to do that to illustrate that very point. So it doesn't really feel like something we can criticize in the film because it was done on purpose. I did watch the film for a second time and I was able to relax a little bit more because I knew where it was going to go. So it allowed me to focus on other parts of the story and other characters, particularly Emma Stone's character. And I found on the second watch, a lot of things about her trauma were made a lot clearer. The only issue I had with Eddington was the underuse of Austin Butler's character, Vernon, who's like this internet messiah. I thought his character was really interesting. And when he showed up, I was like, oh yeah, this is really just going to add so much fuel to the fire. We're really going to see him become a huge part in the movie. And it was really adding something that we do see in today's society that complemented nicely with Pedro Pascal's character, the protesters and the BLM movement, and then, Joe being on the more conservative side. And then we've now got this guy who is pretending to be someone who's going to solve people's problems. He's preying on vulnerable people, kind of like a NXIVM kind of cult sort of situation. So I was really keen on learning more about that storyline. And I'm still thinking about that character and kind of coming up with storylines for him, which in itself is interesting. And I like that. I like when a movie can do that and it doesn't give you everything. It leaves you wanting more. But I just kind of simply just selfishly would have liked to have seen Austin Butler flesh that character out a little bit more. I have heard people say the same for Emma Stone's character, who was very understated and kind of quiet. And we've seen Emma Stone in such amazing roles lately. So it did feel like she was underused. But the more I thought about her character. And when I listened to this interview with Ari Aster, he explains that we are experiencing Emma Stone through Joaquin's character. So she is kind of a ghost. You know, she's depressed. She's like a bit of a shell, and she's quite far away from him. So she's always removed, and that's why we don't really like see or hear from her that much in the film. So again, it makes sense. And the more I delved into any problem that I had with the film, it was answered so well and it was justified completely, which is very unlike other films that have been released recently, like Weapons, where, you know, I'm going looking for answers and I'm not really finding anything that's sufficing or making me feel like I understand the film. There is also this question of what was the main overall message of Eddington? It's being criticized for being a centrist film, and I can see that for sure, but I think that the main part of what we are taking away from Eddington is not only the lack of empathy in our society, but an overarching issue of these things happening at a larger scale that we maybe aren't so aware of or we're being distracted from because we are really caught up with identity politics and personal issues that we're squabbling over at like a kind of lower level. And then whilst we do that, whether that's manufactured, I don't want to sound like Dawn, like the mother-in-law who's, you know, really into conspiracy theories in the film, but I think that, you know, there is some truth to that in we get distracted as a society with all of these like little things and we focus on those. And then all the while there are these things like in the film, the data center that is being built. And I think it's worth noting that the film opens with the sign that that's going to be built and it ends the last frame with it being built. So to me, that was kind of the overall message. Like that was the journey of the film, was like starting with that and then ending with it being built regardless of what had happened or the intentions of the people in the town. I think that's definitely a comment for a lot of things that are going on in the world right now. And like I said, I don't want to become a political commentator, so I'm going to leave that there. But overall, I thought that Eddington was an absolutely amazing, amazing film. It's definitely one of the favorites for me so far this year. But let me know your thoughts below because I know that not everybody feels like that. And I just find it so fascinating how films can resonate with people and they can love them. And then other people are like, no, it just completely did not land for me. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. This is a new channel, so let me know below if there are any other reviews or movies that you would like to see me talk about on the channel.